Breaking news. US defense officials say naval forces are monitoring aggressive Venezuelan ship movements near American operations in the Caribbean. At 4:12 local time, radar screens inside a U.S. Navy ship lit up without warning. 6 contacts appeared at once. Tight formation, same speed, same heading. These were not civilian vessels. The ships were identified as Venezuelan warships, 21 nautical miles ahead, moving straight across the transit route of the USS George Washington carrier strike group in international waters. No radio calls, no course change. Instead of turning away, they closed distance. Inside the combat center, voices sharpened, range rings tightened. Every eye stayed on the same bearing. 6 ships, 1 direction. This was not an accident. Across the strike group, readiness levels increased. Quietly, automatically, trained crews moved without orders being repeated. Everyone understood the risk. At sea, distance disappears fast. This was not a lost patrol or a navigation mistake. It was a deliberate move, a test, a signal sent in steel and engines. What the Venezuelan commanders believed was pressure. What they didn't yet understand was how fast the balance had already shifted. They thought they were challenging one target. They were stepping into something much larger. If you want to follow how this moment unfolded second by second, stay with us. What happened in those first minutes mattered far beyond 6 ships on a radar screen. The Caribbean is not empty water. It is one of the busiest corridors in the Western Hemisphere, with constant commercial traffic, energy shipments, and military patrols moving through narrow routes every hour. When warships maneuver aggressively here, it is never just about 2 navies. One wrong move can ripple across civilian shipping lanes within minutes. For the US Navy, this was not a drill or a routine presence mission. The carrier strike group was operating in international waters, following established transit routes. Every sailor on board knew the rules. Stay predictable, stay professional. Avoid escalation unless forced. For Venezuela, the calculation was different. Moving surface warships this close was a political signal, not a tactical necessity. It was meant to show resistance, to test how far American forces would tolerate pressure without reacting. These kinds of moves live in a gray zone, close enough to create tension, but just short of firing a weapon. But on the decks of those ships, this was no abstract message. Sailors do not experience strategy. They experience distance, closing, alarms standing by, and the understanding that a single decision made far away could place them in direct danger. Every mile mattered. Every second mattered more. This is where misjudgment becomes dangerous. Political leaders see symbols, crews see consequences. And once ships commit to a course, there is very little space left to correct mistakes. So as this standoff tightened, one question hung over the water. Was this pressure meant to stop here, or was someone willing to push it one step further? If you believe these maneuvers were reckless and risked lives, comment 1. If you think this was controlled signaling meant to avoid conflict, comment 9 and subscribe so you don't miss what unfolded next. Because the most critical moments were still ahead, and the margin for error was about to shrink to seconds. The first response came fast, but it was almost silent. Inside the Combat Information Center, the radar picture sharpened. What had been 6 distant contacts now showed clear tracks. Speed confirmed. Formation confirmed. There was no doubt left about intent. These ships were holding course. A watch officer called out the range. Another confirmed bearing. On the main screen, the symbols shifted color. That change meant something simple and serious. Real ships, real crews, real consequences. Across the strike group, systems came alive. Not with noise, but with precision. Sensors synchronized. Data flowed automatically from ship to ship. What one radar saw, every platform now shared. On board the escorting destroyers, fire control teams stood ready. No weapons were fired, none needed to be. At this stage, information was the weapon. Every movement by the Venezuelan ships was measured, logged, and predicted seconds ahead. Out on the carrier, flight crews moved with practiced calm. Aircraft were not launching yet, but pilots were already strapped in. engines were checked. Deck crews watched the horizon while listening for instructions that might never come. This is how modern confrontations begin. Not with explosions, but with decisions made faster than the eye can follow. The Venezuelan ships continued forward. No radio contact, no warning calls, just steady movement, straight across the carrier's path. For the sailors watching the screens, this was the most dangerous phase. No shots fired, no clear line crossed, just enough pressure to force a choice. One technician later described it simply: you could feel the clock speeding up. Every second that passed reduced options. Every mile closed increased risk. One wrong action could flip the situation instantly. So here's the question as those first responses locked into place. If you think the US should have responded even more forcefully at this point, comment 1. If you believe restraint was the right move, comment 9, and subscribe to stay with us as this standoff escalated. Because what happened next pushed this encounter from tense to truly unstable. As the distance continued to close, the situation entered a more dangerous phase. There was no shouting, no alarms yet, just quiet confirmation after quiet confirmation. Range updates came every few seconds. Bearings barely changed. The Venezuelan ships were holding their line. In close encounters at sea, small movements matter. A slight turn can signal retreat. A steady course can signal intent. Here, the course stayed steady. Across the strike group, readiness increased another step. Defensive systems shifted modes. Electronic sensors widened their focus. Every radar suite pulled in more detail, more certainty. The picture was no longer forming. It was complete. On board the destroyers, crews stood by their consoles, eyes locked on screens. Fatigue was not the problem, adrenaline was. Time stretched in an unnatural way. Seconds felt longer. Every update landed heavier than the last. No one spoke unless necessary. Silence became discipline. Out on the flight deck, the ocean stayed calm. Blue water, clear sky. That contrast made everything feel sharper. Calm outside, pressure inside. Sailors watched the horizon, knowing that what mattered most was happening on screens below deck. The Venezuelan formation adjusted slightly, not away, sideways. A subtle change that forced recalculation across multiple systems at once. New vectors, new timelines, new risk. That single adjustment erased earlier assumptions and tightened reaction windows again. Every update shortened options. At these ranges, seconds matter more than miles. One sudden maneuver could trigger automatic responses before anyone had time to speak or reconsider. This is where escalation often happens. Not because someone plans it, but because momentum builds faster than restraint. For the sailors watching, this was the longest stretch of the encounter. No release, no resolution, just waiting while knowing the margin for error was shrinking with every passing moment. One officer later described it as standing on a line you can't see, hoping no one steps over it. And that's when the tension peaked again. So let us know where you stand as this pressure built. If you believe the Venezuelan move here pushed the situation too far, comment 1. If you think this was still controlled maneuvering, comment 9, and subscribe to stay with us as this encounter took its most dangerous turn. Because the next action changed everything. Then the situation took a turn no one wanted. One of the Venezuelan ships made a move that instantly changed how this encounter was read. It wasn't a turn away. It wasn't a slowdown. Instead, a new signal appeared on American sensors. Different frequency, narrow beam, focused. Fire control radar. This wasn't a search sweep. This wasn't navigation. This was the system used to guide weapons. For the crews watching their screens, the meaning was simple and alarming. Someone had taken the step that comes right before firing. Inside the combat center, the reaction was immediate. Not panic, precision. Systems adjusted automatically. Defensive measures shifted without orders being spoken out loud. Timelines collapsed from minutes to seconds. Out on deck, pilots already seated in their aircraft felt the change before hearing it. The posture was different now. This was no longer just pressure. This was intent being tested. What made this moment so dangerous was how fast it unfolded. A single decision, possibly made by one officer on one ship, now carried consequences for everyone involved. 6 ships, thousands of sailors, 2 governments watching closely. The Venezuelan crew may not have realized how clearly that radar activation was seen, how quickly it was classified, or how little room it left for misinterpretation. In naval encounters, this step is understood worldwide. It signals readiness to strike. For several long seconds, nothing else changed. No missiles launched, no shots fired. Just systems locked, crews frozen in focus, and a silence thick enough to feel. This was the point of no return. Either the signal would end, or events would move faster than anyone could stop them. So as this moment hung in the balance, tell us what you think. If you believe this radar activation crossed a line and risked open conflict, comment 1. If you think it was a bluff meant to force a reaction, comment 9 and subscribe to stay with us. Because what happened in the next few seconds decided everything. The next seconds moved faster than memory. The fire control signal was confirmed. Not a glitch, not interference. A clean lock. That was enough. Systems across the American formation reacted instantly, faster than any spoken command. Electronic defenses switched on. Screens flickered as countermeasures adjusted automatically. Target data updated across every ship at once. What had been a tense standoff became a live engagement posture without a single word being raised. On the flight deck, the shift was visible. Crew members cleared positions, pilots tightened grips, engines were ready. No launch yet, but no hesitation either. Everyone understood the margin had collapsed. Inside the combat center, the countdown was not verbal, it was internal. Operators watched timers shrink. Seconds replaced minutes. One officer later said it felt like time narrowed to a single line moving forward. Across the water, the Venezuelan ships held their positions. The fire control radar stayed on. Every system on the American side treated it as real, because at sea, assuming a bluff can be fatal. This was the most dangerous moment of the encounter. One wrong input, one delayed response, one nervous action. That was all it would take to trigger a chain no one could stop. Radio channels stayed silent. No warnings, no threats. Just 2 forces locked in place, each waiting for the other to make the next irreversible move. Then, abruptly, the signal dropped. The fire control radar went dark. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Systems stayed hot. Crews stayed locked. No one trusted the silence yet. Another second passed, then another. No new signals, no launches, no sudden turns. Slowly, readiness levels eased one step back. Not fully, not yet. Just enough to breathe. The crisis had peaked and pulled back at the last possible moment. So let us know what you think. If you believe this moment came within seconds of open conflict, comment 1. If you think control was never truly lost, comment 9 and subscribe to stay with us as we break down what followed. Because even without a single shot fired, the impact of what just happened was far from over. When the tension finally eased, the ocean looked the same as it had hours earlier. Calm, empty, blue. But nothing about this encounter was routine. The Venezuelan ships altered course and moved away at standard speed. No final signals, no dramatic exit, just a quiet withdrawal that ended the standoff without a single shot fired. On paper, it would later be logged as an uneventful patrol. For the crews involved, it was anything but. No sailors were injured, no ships were damaged, yet the message carried far beyond the Caribbean. This moment showed how fast a political signal at sea can slide toward real conflict, and how thin the margin is between pressure and disaster. For us forces, the outcome reinforced a familiar truth. Presence matters. Discipline matters more. Deterrence does not always come from firing weapons, but from showing that escalation will not favor the side that pushes too far. For Venezuela, the maneuver gained attention, but it also exposed limits. It showed how quickly control can slip when symbolism collides with reality on the water. So here's the final question. If you believe this encounter successfully deterred further escalation, comment 1. If you think it only delayed a bigger confrontation, comment 9 and subscribe for continued coverage. Because this ended quietly, but the pressure behind it is still there.